Hanukkah is usually portrayed as a battle of freedom of religion. Okay, the Maccabees threw off their oppressors and established the idea, and were able to freely practice their religion, and that's the way it's all talked about in terms of this idea of freedom.
Is that from a secular perspective?
That's from a secular, right, from a secular perspective. The fact is that if you really look at Hanukkah, it had nothing to do with freedom of religion. It was a battle between religions. The truth is that how did Hanukkah start? Right, the Greeks came, were trying to force people to bow down to idols. Okay, one Jew actually went and bowed down to idol, and what happened to that one Jew?
He got killed.
Right, Matisyahu came by and killed him.
Yeah.
Okay, because he was not arguing for religion; he was arguing for his religion. So arguing that Hanukkah is like freedom of religion is like taking one of the battles between Roman Catholicism and Protestantism in Europe, where they killed each other left and right, and say they're each fighting for freedom of religion. They weren't fighting for freedom of religion; they're fighting for their religion. Okay, so that's usually the way Hanukkah is presented.
That's not the first time it's happened, though.
What?
So there's that classic story I heard from Rabbi Berdowitz.
Yeah.
That recently, with the Reform movement, they're saying that, the Gedolim of the past, or Moshe, would actually speak out for the Reform community. They wouldn't let them do their own thing. But the truth is, what they didn't realize was that he was ushering them.
Right.
Doing that.
The truth is, it's interesting what you're saying, because the fact is that in a certain way, it's interesting because the Reform get all angry. We're all angry at the Orthodox. They broke down unity. They say the Orthodox are always challenging unity and so on and so forth. So there's a Reform scholar by the name of Eugene Borowitz, who's like a leading Reform scholar, and he basically said, something, if we were only interested in unity and taking account Jewish unity, there never would have been a Reform movement. Because when we started, we were the ones causing problems. Right? The fact is that a lot of people try to point these things out and so forth. But he's right about Rav Moshe had very strong attitudes about it, and basically because he really perceived it to be a different faith. He had very strong attitudes. Okay, anyway, there's a lot of legitimacy in Rav Moshe's position. Okay, but the point is that a lot of people present Hanukkah. Now the truth is, Hanukkah is a very strange holiday, just to the aside. If you actually go to the Nishma website, I believe there's an article there on Hanukkah that's called The Irony of Hanukkah, which presents something very interesting. What is Hanukkah about? Hanukkah is about the fight against assimilation. Yes. And yet, what is the most assimilated holiday? If you really look at assimilated holidays. I remember when I was a Rabbi in Kingston, New York.
What do you mean by assimilated holidays?
Okay, so what Jewish holiday has become more accepted like it's part of the assimilation? The fact is I remember when I was in Rabbi in Kingston, New York, I remember someone comes to me and says, "Yeah, I know about you. The big three Jewish holidays. There's the high holy days, and there's Passover, and there's Hanukkah. It's a major Jewish holiday. The truth is Hanukkah is not a major holiday. Okay, there's not even an indication that Hanukkah will continue in the Zman of Mashiach, right? However, in the ideas of the world, Hanukkah is a great cheshuvah holiday. Why? Because it's been affected by its time period. Right? A lot of people celebrate Hanukkah because it's the Jewish way of celebrating the period. Right? And you see people talking about, I don't know about you guys, but Hanukkah gifts, like, where did it come from?
It's the Jewish version of Christmas. Right,
exactly. So it's like so in a certain way it's very strange that this holiday has really gotten all this publicity because of its assimilative aspect. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and stuff like that.
Happy Hanukkah Bush.
Right. So the fact is, on the other hand, though, in a certain way, it did fight assimilation because it allowed people to have a Jewish slant, that sort of kept them still on side a little bit. Anyways, it's just something to the side.
So the Maccabees are in the Olympics.
Right. But by the way, it's another irony of Hanukkah that one of the things the Maccabees were much against were the Olympics, and here the Jewish Olympics are called the Maccabeah. I mean, it's so strange.
That and A-Pie was an annual Hanukkah party.
What? And what?
A-Pie was an annual Hanukkah party.
Anyway, so the thing is,
I think that is more, not so much a Jewish reaction, but rather the attempt of a newly tolerant Christian society to, at their most high time, to acknowledge that there are other people in the world?
At that point in time, it was, I think, you see how Hanukkah developed. It's an interesting question, but the point is that it was a way that if you had a Jew a Jewish guy in business, you could sit there and say, well, happy holidays to you too. It was a way of acknowledging this, sort of being able to share the festive season. So it makes it work better. But the fact is that really, if you're really fighting assimilation, you would like to not have this festive season at all. One of the things I loved the being in Eretz Yisrael was that December 25th was just another day on the calendar. Right?
Unless you're in Tel Aviv.
Well, where I was in Yerushalayim, it it just sort of passed by. Anyways, but the point is that it really points to the fact that Hanukkah is really there's a lot of perceptions about Hanukkah that really, when you go right to the root of it, it's really not what it's about. And one of these perceptions in North America is Hanukkah's love, because everyone says it's a great freedom of religion, the great battle for freedom of religion. But it really wasn't really a battle for freedom of religion. It was really the battle of one religion against another religion. Okay. That seems to be what it really is about. But the question is there any truth to this argument that Hanukkah represents freedom of religion? Okay? In the sense that, or we can ask this another way, what is the Jewish view of freedom of religion? Okay, and to understand that, one of the reasons we could talk about Hanukkah representing freedom of religion is because the Jews have benefited from freedom of religion here in America. Moshe called America Medina Shel Chesed because of the way they accepted Jews.
I wonder. Because, I don't know, I see Judaism flourishing more in persecution than it does, or at least real Jewish core values flourishing in persecution.
The fact is that people say this, that with persecution there's more people, and being Jewish and so forth, with freedom you have a different type of assimilation. But the fact is, it's like there's no doubt that if we're in a situation where we're able to practice mitzvahs in a very positive way, we can really do a lot more. I already pointed out, he's from Baltimore, and he said the Reverterman says people think in Europe so much more learning in Europe. He says the amount of learning you have in America from Balabatim was it totally overshadowed what was there in Europe. People had to go work in Europe. Right, the ideas that people take off half a day to learn, or this to learn, and go a couple hours. You couldn't do that in Europe. You had to wake up early, you had to work, you had to come home, and if you were able to hop around and do a little bit of learning, it's a tremendous idea. But the fact is we have benefited. We benefited people going to school. Look at this. The fact is that people go through education in high school, and then they go learn for a few years in Hechts, maybe or go somewhere else. The truth is we have benefited from the wealth of this country and from the East. The truth is a lot of people become assimilated. A lot of people do have a lot of freedom. But the point is that there's a possibility for this. So Ramosha points out that there's a...
In learning, yes, but internally, no.
It's an interesting question you're raising in a sense, but is that because of the wealth of the community, or is that because of the intensity of people? The question is what really is that emotion? There's an article by Dr. Chaim Soloveitchik, the Rav's son, called Rupture and Reconstruction, where he points out that there's a difference in the Jewishness of today than years ago in terms of what he felt was the spirit of people. And he said he once was speaking to his father, the Rav, and he says, in a certain way, a lot of our learning today, and a lot of our following of Torah is very technical.
Yes.
Okay, he says you have books, full books on Omer. You got Spiritual Omer takes up a few sections in Shulchan Aruch. All of a sudden, the person comes with a whole book this thick on all halachas of Spiritual Omer. And it happens over and over with all these mitzvot and so on and so on. People go home and read it, and it becomes very technical. But what's lost, he said, is the spirit. He says you can go into a shul where the people were not so medactic in halacha, older people, but for some reason when they davened they felt something. Now the truth is it may have something to do with what you're saying, because the Gemara does say that the fact is when you daven there's an aspect of davening because of oppression. Of course, Baruch Hu, the fact is more Brachos talks about the idea that if you're in or actually quote Tehillim. Right, exactly. The fact is from your depths you cry out. So the truth is under oppression. There's no atheist in the foxhole. So
we also learn that through the Haggadah, and also the reason why I have these viewpoints is from Soviet Jewry.
The fact is that it's true in many ways that in oppression you're forced to respond, and it may bring out a certain amount of depth. But on the other hand, though, there is a concept of, it depends what you think is the ultimate goal. The fact is that in certain ways being in a beneficial place does have its positive side to it. So being in a place that has some financial stability and so forth, you can have more learning and stuff like that. So the question is how you get things going. But the fact is when Moshe did refer to America as a Medina Shel Chesed. So the point is we have benefited from freedom of religion. So just to look at Chanuka, just to raise an issue and say, is it dismissing of freedom of religion? The point is that there is some value in freedom of religion. Okay, whether it's the Chanuka story or not, there is a value in freedom of religion. So that's something I just want to deal with and try to understand it from the Chanuka motif.
When you say freedom of religion, you mean that secular society in general should be tolerant of other religions? Or do you mean freedom of religion that we should be tolerant of other religions as well?
So that's really what we have to look at.
I have a different question also. It's an idea of tolerance as in let them worship whoever they want, let us worship whoever they want, but yet we draw a line when it comes to them trying to convert us.
Okay, so the fact is, what we're asking is that when we advocate freedom of religion, we could ask it another way. What would a Jewish state, al pi Torah, practice in terms of freedom of religion? We've benefited from freedom of religion by America or Canada. What would a Jewish state following Torah follow in terms of freedom of religion? Okay, and from that perspective, you can get some idea of what would happen. First thing you have to recognize, though, is what does freedom of religion say? Now, I'm going to be referring to three articles. I'm just saying for the people in KosherTube that the three articles I'm referring to are all from the Nishma website, and they're all found in the commentary section of the Nishma website. And the three articles are France, freedom of religion versus freedom from religion. Second one is freedom of religion with comments on halachic tolerance. And the third one is Chanuka, a battle for freedom of religion. Okay, now what we're going to try and do is investigate what really is a Jewish concept of freedom of religion, and how we can put that into Chanuka and so forth. So one of the things we have to think about is what exactly is freedom of religion. And you look in that in the argument from France, freedom of religion, freedom from religion, we are living in a world where, in one hand, we're beginning to see problems with freedom of religion. So France has outlawed the burqa in public places, right? You cannot wear conspicuously religious symbols in public schools in France. In Canada, there was a recent law just passed that if you want to get Canadian citizenship, the judge who swears you as a Canadian citizen has to see your face. So if you're a woman who wishes to wear burqa, you can't become a Canadian citizen. Okay, the judge has to see your face. So the point is that the imposition, or is that freedom of religion? So the argument is, well, there's reasons for doing that. Okay, but the fact is, to really understand this, you have to understand what really is freedom of religion. So let's take the case of the Doukhobors.
What?
The Doukhobors. Right, the Doukhobors are a sect in Vancouver, in British Columbia, who part of their religion is running around naked. Okay, and that was considered, and that would be a problem with improper, what's the word, with indecency in public, and they were arrested for running around naked. Okay, and the fact is they argued, well, it's just freedom of religion. Okay, there was another decision that was recently made in Canada concerning what do you call it? Polygamy. Okay, there's an issue whether polygamy is against the Bill of Rights in Canada, and there's an argument made, a decision made that it's not, because it is considered to be demeaning to women. It's considered to be some way of negative, some negative consequences. Therefore, the argument for that it's our religion does not allow you to have polygamy. We have cases with the witnesses, okay, who will not allow blood transfusion to the children. What the state does is step in, create the child as a ward of the state, and says, this is our and says, listen, you cannot do this because of freedom of religion. Now, so in all those cases, how do you reconcile that with freedom of religion? What does freedom of religion really mean? Okay? Now, France argued that we don't have freedom of religion, we have freedom from religion. What does that term mean? Any ideas?
Freedom from religion?
Yeah.
You can't impose your religion against others. However, France is taking it to a whole new level.
Okay, because the fact is you have to understand what is religious imposition. What France is saying is we will not impose because of religion, but we will impose because of secular values.
So it's just a different religion.
So what exactly is secular values? Okay, and this is where you start getting into issues. The first thing you have to recognize is that every society imposes its values on the members of its society. And whatever society you're in, you are going to impose values upon the society. Okay? So for example, in Canada, we have certain values. Okay? We have values in terms of women's rights. We have therefore we're saying, hey, this is an important Canadian value, and if we think your religious values are going to contradict these Canadian values, we're not going to let you get away with it. Another example is beating children. Truth is that there was a case that was happened a few years ago where a family was found guilty of mistreating their children, and all they said is that, hey, this is the way we do it in our country, and this is our value system.
Spare the rod and spoil the child.
Right,
was
exactly.
the pasuk that they quoted.
Right, and the fact is that we don't care. That's not Canadian. So the truth is that every society has values. So if that's true, what does freedom of religion mean? So the first thing you say, freedom from religion in France, was a recognition that there's certain values that come out of secular analysis, and there's certain values that come out of religious analysis. What they were concerned about was religious values. Now, why would there be a specific challenge by religious values? What's the concern for religious values? Well, the concern of religious values is because of the authoritarian nature of religion. Okay, if you look in terms of France, that was Roman Catholicism, which basically was a top-down approach. You have no say in the values come down from you. Religion basically is an imposing structure, right? Do this because the religion says it or because the deity says it. There's no more discussion. It's completely clear-cut aspect of religion is deity says this, there you have to do it. That's what the major imposition was of Roman Catholicism upon Europe, where there was persecution of Jews and persecution of other things. It was basically the religion basically saying, I'm right, you're wrong. You can't argue with me, so therefore I'm imposing my way. What developed in terms of with the Reformation and with the Renaissance, the Reformation, and then with the Age of Reason and so forth and so forth, was the idea: hey, wait a second, you can't just impose yourself on me because I may think differently.
Yeah.
Right? I have a different belief. If all your belief is coming from is that's what your deity says, well, my deity says something else, and now you're imposing upon me. So the idea was, if you have ideas that come from thought, then we have ability to talk about it and so forth and so forth. So the question is we don't want to be imposed upon by an authority figure, which is what the church was. Okay, that's what freedom from religion was. Freedom of religion was basically saying, if you believe something, right, even if it's irrational, we're going to allow you to go ahead with that belief.
Just don't involve my kid.
What? Or don't hurt me. So the point is that, and a classic example of this is I saw a case once with some Christian scientists. Christian scientists are people who believe in faith healing, right? But according to Christian scientists, the worst thing you can do for your kid who's sick is to take him to a doctor, because that shows lack of faith in God. Okay, so it was a case I was reading about meningitis. Kid had meningitis, and parents didn't take him to the doctor. Finally, the mother broke down and took him to the final, 3 days later to the hospital. It was already too late. The kid died. Okay, so what happened was they found the mother negligent, basically criminally negligent in the death of her child, because she wasn't so devout, as evidenced by the fact she went to the hospital. But the father, who never showed doubt, freedom of religion, he totally was off, because his belief system was that. So therefore, what you're talking about is the allowance to believe in things regardless of what reason you believe in them. Okay?
So the question is where to set the standards.
So the question is really what is freedom from religion means. We will not impose authoritarian perceptions on you that doesn't come out of an aspect of discussion. Okay? Freedom up with that. France doesn't say they're in favor of freedom of religion. They're saying we're in favor of freedom from religion, and therefore they're stronger in terms of their imposition of secular values. Every society does impose. Freedom of religion basically says that even things which we deem to be irrational, we will allow you to practice to a certain extent. If your religion then says you're going to have child sacrifices, we're not going to let you do that, because that's going to run in the face of our secular values, okay, or our values that.
Here's the question. Like, I know this is just a shot in the dark, but let's say Judaism had some ridiculous laws that were not interpreted, that cannot be interpreted by the rest of the world.
So now,
look at Mila.
Exactly. Now you have
Mila
Hanukkah.
benefits from.
Now you have Hanukkah. Not back then. Now you begin to understand Hanukkah. Okay? People look at it as a nationalistic argument. The Greeks hate the Jews and so forth and so forth. But that was not it. First of all, Hanukkah was a civil war. Right? It was Jews against Jews and Hellenist Jews against them. And what was the argument? Hellenist Jews basically argued that Mila was ridiculous. Okay? Mila was... You think about it. Okay, and it's not comparable, but you look at the way people have an attitude towards female circumcision. What's called female circumcision, nothing to do with circumcision. It's basically mutilation.
Yes.
But the fact is people do defend it based upon their religion, and then people say, no, you can't do that to that little girl.
Should we
right? What?
That's also another question.
Right?
How do we as Jews... This idea of pluralism.
But that's it. So the point is that that's the way the Greeks looked at Mila. Here is an 8-day-old baby, right? And you're mutilating it. And when the Greek thought, right, the physical body was perfect vessel.
Yeah.
So you're mutilating the perfect body, and don't forget they built up the body. They had the Olympics and so forth and so forth. You mutilated the body based upon what? Based upon some idea that comes from somewhere else that I don't really, like religion. This crazy belief from somewhere else. So the point is that's where you start seeing this idea of freedom of religion, because it was not just simply my God against your God, which was religions used to have battles between gods, right? Like, you think in terms of the story of the Trojan War, right? There were gods on this side and gods on that side, and whoever was the smarter gods, they got away with it, right? But the point is that's the way a lot of people understood laws. The truth is, it also affected things in terms of cholesterol, because the Roman emperor used to send a daily sacrifice to the base of Mikdash. You know that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's really when the reason when we return it when the sacrifice was turned down. You know the whole story.
Comes to Bar Kamsa?
There's a story that comes in Bar Kamsa where the king sent a sacrifice, and what the guy did. I never know if it's Kamsa or Bar Kamsa is the guy who was hurt or whatever.
I think it was Kamsa.
Well, it was sent to Kamsa, but Bar Kamsa, I don't know if it was sent to Bar. Anyways, the point is he made a moom on the animal that would not be good for. That would be acceptable to the idolatrous worshippers, but would not be acceptable in the base of Mikdash. And that was the whole question over there of should we accept that korban or not?
So whether or not they should kill him.
No, that's afterwards. But the fact is the first thing is should they accept the korban or not? Okay, it was a Caesar's korban. Okay, he always sent daily sacrifices, and what this guy said to the Caesar when he went to Rome, he says they're thinking of rebelling. And if they and I'll show it to you, they won't accept your sacrifice in the temple, in their temple. And the point is that he sent this temple, and then he made this move, and the point was that the sacrifice was rejected. So Gemara tells us, and that started all the problems, because then the Roman Emperor says, "Oh boy, they're going to rebel," and it came up like that. There's a whole question like that. The Gemara actually says it was the Anivas. Oh, I forget his name. The Nevis of the Tana who made that decision.
Yes, they basically call him a.
They basically said it was as a Nevis because he didn't think he was chashuv enough to go against the normative law. It's a mum. We can't accept it. Really, it was a shasot chak and it was a tzarach gadol, and for Klal Yisrael to accept it with a mum, but he didn't feel he had the power to. He wasn't. He wasn't of a high enough madrega to make that kind of decision.
That's opposite. That he was actually saying that how could he was too high madrega, we shouldn't do it.
No. Anyways, that's the way Moshe understands it.
Oh.
But Moshe learns it that way. Okay, but the fact is that because it says the anivas of it, says the anivas comes out. Okay, so the point is though, is that getting back to this, the fact is that what happened. But over here, it was very much the Greeks were very much into philosophy. Okay. Hellenism was spread by Alexander. Alexander was a student of Aristotle. Philosophy was rational, and lo and behold, what occurred was they were basically saying, "Hey, that old time religion that's talking about authority and woo and some ideas. This is an 8-day baby, and you're mutilating it. Right? We can't let you do this anymore." Okay. That's really what it came. That's why Mila was such a big thing. It was a major statement. It was like this was a battle. But the truth is this is where it really parallels freedom of religion. Okay, in the sense that what we said is we're told by Kodesh Baruch Hu that this is a mitzvah, and even though it's against rational understanding, we're still going to follow it. Okay, and that's where the bottom came from. So that's why it does parallel some aspects of freedom of religion. Okay, however, it doesn't mean that it necessarily means the Maccabees were going to accept freedom of religion, because the fact is they accepted their tzivui from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? They believed that God commanded them, but if someone came up and wanted to do some crazy thing, right, he wouldn't let them do it either. So the Maccabees were not favoring free religion. They were favoring the concept that we believe HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us this law, but we're not going to let you get away with anything. So the truth is that's an important aspect of what a Mammon believes. Mammon believes that even if these things are contrary to what would be secular rational thought, we will follow it. However, now
inherently Jewish. These are inherently Jewish.
Well, no, this is inherent religious principles. Fact is, though, then you get into a problem. Problem is that you get into the problem of Christianity, and the statement by one of their early church fathers, I forget who it was. I forget. It starts with a T. Who basically came up with the idea that I believe because it's absurd. Okay, exact quote I'm not sure, but usually it's said credo que absurdum est. I believe because it's absurd. It's the very fact that belief is contrary to reason. So religion gets into a point that belief is contrary to reason. Okay? That the whole point of religion is that it's something that's incomprehensible. Something you can't figure it out. So that's an attitude that says, okay, thoughtfully you look at it. Like, for example, nowadays we look at it and say it's really great that the Mila and goes in line with doctors and so forth and so forth. But with the perception of greater Emunah is if all the doctors are yelling, don't do it, and you did it, that would be an even greater show of Emunah and faith.
Yes.
Okay, from a perception that the more you're going to do it against the wisdom of thought, that's it. But the fact is, Judaism doesn't go so far. If you look into Kuzari, you'll see that throughout Yosef Karo constantly says, nothing I'm going to say is going against reason. He has a different perception of reason, different understanding of reason, but nothing is contrary to reason. Fact is that in a certain way, Chanukah has a certain aspect to it that does accept this whole idea, but does have this aspect of freedom of religion, because Chanukah has two sides to it that are very unique. First is that Chanukah is a celebration of Torah Sheba'al Peh. Okay, according to many people, Chanukah is a celebration of Torah Sheba'al Peh. What's the uniqueness of Torah Sheba'al Peh?
It was a. First of all, it was never written down, and it was transferred through word of mouth through generations.
But what else?
But what else? You had to be remembered. It had to be
more than that.
It was
more
born
than
out of
remembered.
devastation.
No.
If you weren't a thinker and rational, you cannot deal with Torah Sheba'al Peh. Torah Sheba'al Peh, the Chachamim were Chachamim. What Torah Sheba'al Peh was about was wisdom.
So was it mentioned that everyone from the door knew from Sinai, knew Torah Sheba'al Peh and understood Torah Sheba'al Peh?
Right, but the point is that Torah Sheba'al Peh is different than other religions in the sense that Torah Sheba'al Peh says the only way you can understand a Kodesh Baruch Hu is by putting in your mind.
So what do you mean? That wasn't arguments and okay, bitch me out, you know?
Exactly, because the fact is we don't necessarily know. Because the point is that we still have to try and figure out what the uniqueness about Torah Sheba'al Peh is that, and this is like it's the anti-fundamentalist. If you think in terms of Christian fundamentalism, it's God says it in the Bible, and there it is, straightforward, blank, 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 blank. To us, if it doesn't make sense, we have problems. We have to analyze it. In other words, in a certain way, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us His direction in a puzzle. Nothing is clear.
But there's also an idea what are the three levels? There's Dat, there's Emunah, Das, and there's Yediyah, Das. And
you're talking about transmissions. What I'm saying, there's different types of our thought. Okay, how people think.
I mean, I'm saying that there's basically there's things that there is an idea of you can't know everything.
Right. But the fact is the only way we can listen to Kodesh Baruch Hu is that Kodesh Baruch Hu speaks to us by demanding of us to think through His ideas. In other words, Kodesh Baruch Hu gave us Torah in a puzzling manner. He didn't say anything directly. If you read Torah Sheba'al Peh, it's trying to figure out what did God tell us to do, and we have all these machlokas about it because it's all a matter of discussion.
But wasn't that okay? So, according to you, from my understanding of Torah Sheba'al Peh, was that they had the tradition, everything was black and white from Har Sinai.
The Rambam holds that position is epicursus.
Really?
Yeah. The Rambam in his Mavo to the Talmud holds if you think that they forgot things and that's the way they did it, that's epicursus. A lot of people don't recognize this in the Rambam. And the Rambam says that every letter of the Torah is the same as Har Sinai. He says in every statement that was clearly made in Torah Sheba'al Peh, we know. The Rambam holds a fantastic idea, which a lot of people have problems with because a lot of Gemara is against it. A lot of Gemara seem to apply it. The Rambam says anything that was halacha Moshe Sinai that was clearly stated by Moshe at Har Sinai, there was never a machlokas. Machlokas only came about in issues which were unclear. Okay, which is most of Torah, because he says most things were not said clearly. There's a famous Ritva. I know the Ritva quotes this medrash. I'm not sure if he says it's a medrash that Ritva poses. He says that when Moshe went up to Shemayim, right, he saw in the heavenly court they had a machlokas there, and there were 70 arguments for Tumah and 70 arguments for Tahor, and they're going back and forth. And Moshe turns to Kodesh Baruch Hu and says, "So what's the answer?" And the Kodesh Baruch Hu says, "When the Sanhedrin states what the answer is, That's the answer.
What about Brysos though? That what like because the Mishnah.
What?
Sorry, maybe I'm mixing up terms, but when the Mishnah was made, it was filtered.
No, what do you mean it was filtered?
Like there were things that were like Mishnahs that weren't written down.
Right. Okay. So the fact is that essentially it's similar to what you said before. We were talking beforehand. The fact is that the great wealth of information, the breadth of information, right? You had to have conclusions. So at certain points in history, we took this tremendous spectrum of opinions and narrowed it down and said, from here on in, we're going with this opinion. So it happened at the time of the Mishnah, there was this was Nifsiko Halacha. This is not a position. Or we now paskin like Beis Hillel. Then at the end of Rabbi, we have specific psaks at the end of the Mishnah. At the end of Shas, we have specific psaks. We now have to paskin this way. Okay? And then there was a further narrowing down with the Shulchan Aruch. So there are filterings in the position, but the fact is that it comes about from the fact that the Kodesh Baruch Hu gave us a Torah that demands our analysis. It's not clear-cut authoritative. So what does that say? It says human beings are involved in the process. You have Loba Shemaimi. The truth is you can't go to someone, a Navi cannot paskin, Mikoach Nevuah. You go up to a Navi and say, what's the halacha? If he says, from a Nevuah, I see this is the answer, irrelevant. A psak halacha can only come through reason of the analysis of Torah. So it's a remarkable statement that says over here, in the sense that we believe HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us Torah, but then it's our mind that has to be involved in understanding what that Torah means. Which means, in a certain way, we are similar to the philosophers.
So what happened with the Urim V'Tumim when they were asked? It
was never psak. They did ask for other things, so they asked who's is this the guy who did this wrong thing?
Why is she here?
There were other questions you could ask him, but not psak.
Not psak, yeah.
Right? A Navi cannot do it. So the point is what I'm trying to point out is that what was unique about Hanukkah is you had Hellenism was running over the world. Because what Hellenism is doing is reason. So every religion in the world just fell in the face of Hellenism. Just fell in the face of Hellenism. Why? Because they're walking around saying, I believe that this voodoo doll is going to do the difference. And the people basically said, yeah, sure. Hellenism, the truth is Hellenism never imposed themselves upon anyone in terms of imposing their religion except for one case. Hellenism didn't have to do that. Hellenism was basically selling itself. When the Greeks walked into countries, they never said, okay, now we're going to follow Greek thought. When they walked into countries, they basically said, hey, we're just doing Hellenism. And the whole world came around to it. Why? Because it was intelligent.
Makes sense.
You had the philosophers. You had these things. And what did they say? Hey, all your little voodoo dolls? Okay, keep doing it. Right? But you had the intelligent people basically saying, we're not going to do voodoo anymore. They come to Eretz Yisrael, and all lo and behold, Hellenism doesn't sell. It sells to some Jews, doesn't sell. Why? Because what? It did to some Jews.
Like a lot.
A lot. But the fact is, there were still people it didn't sell to. And the only place that the Hellen Jews had to go to the Syrian Greeks and said, hey, come help us because we're going to impose Hellenism. It's the only case we had to impose Hellenism. But why? Because Klal Yisrael had Torah, and Torah wasn't old-time religion. Torah was intellectual analysis with one addition, the acceptance of HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying something on Har Sinai, which gave over further thought. So the people who followed Torah, they weren't old-time religion guys, like preachers. They were the geniuses of the time, who also knew philosophy and aspects like that. They were thinkers.
They weren't geniuses at the time?
No, because Torah needs genius. You have to use your mind to understand Torah.
So one of the proofs I heard of why Judaism is more legitimate, a proof to the legitimacy of Torah, is that my Rabbi was great. Said his Rabbi was greater, and it's going on and on and on.
It's very interesting because I just read this in Freud. Freud, in his book called The Future of an Illusion, he talks about the arguments for religion. He says one of the arguments of religion is you have to follow the proofs of the previous generations. He says, but if these previous generations were primitive, individuals, well, why should we trust the decisions 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, of primitive people, right, who don't think. The only thing is, and I believe this for a long time, one of the great proofs of Torah, I mean, to me, is that when I say I trust, Chazal believed in Torah Shabbat Peh, Chazal believed in Maimonides, right? To me, it's not some, caveman believed in it. I'm talking about Rabbi Akiva, right? I'm talking about Rabbi Tarfon. I'm talking about Rabbi Meir, who have identified their genius over and over again. Okay, it's the very fact that the Vilna Gaon believed in Torah Shabbat, the Rambam, and what were they? They were geniuses. I remember one time I saw here in Canada there was I was over at a friend of mine who was a druggist, a pharmacy student, and I saw on the wall he had a poster on the wall, okay, and it was about there were 6 fathers of modern day pharmacology, and one of them was Maimonides. See, he had this poster of Maimonides as one of the fathers of modern day pharmacology. I looked at the poster and I read it. Forget not mentioning the Yad HaChazakah, forget not mentioning the Moreh Nevuchim, didn't even mention he was Jewish. Okay? And I'm looking and saying, and my first reaction was I was really upset. Wow, they don't even mention he was a Gaon and a Gaon. It dawned on me. Do you understand how great the Rambam was? He was considered one of the fathers of modern day pharmacology, and that's what he did on the side. You know what I mean? Like they can say he did this and this and this and this and this. Good, that's unbelievable. But he really put his mind into. He can even not even talk about it. He was so great. The truth is when you understand that aspect of Chazal. That's where I read this in Freud. I said, okay, so he can't argue that in terms of Klal Yisrael, because Klal Yisrael, you're talking about geniuses who came to these conclusions. So the truth is that, and that was really where the battle with Chanuka happened. You had intelligence from the Hellenist world, and you had this other world that on the surface they're saying, hey, these guys, look at they're doing this barbaric practice on these 8-day-old sons, 8-day-old males, and it's barbaric. On the other hand, turns around that they say, wait a second, this is a tzivur HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it's not from some good old-time religion guys. It's guys who were just as more genius than the guys who were arguing it. So therefore, intellectually, it was a real battle, and therefore there was tension between the Hellenists and the Maccabees, the Chazal.
Okay, but underlying it all, I mean, the intellectualism in Judaism is it's almost surface. I mean, it doesn't really matter. If we argue for 3 hours about whether or not electricity really counts as whatever the Isra is on Shabbos, and we come to the conclusion that we don't think it is. I mean, I was speaking to a friend of mine who's an engineering student who said it's completely different than even what it was when it was originally. Yeah. So we'd still, because people do it, and that's sort of what's done.
The fact is that Rosh Zalman actually, except when it created heat and light, the problem is an incandescent light bulb. Okay, when it creates heat and light, then you have a problem. A lot of people, it's Aish or whatever, because heat and light, from what I understand, a lot of people hold heat and light is the definition of Aish. An object that gives off heat and light is the definition. It doesn't seem to that's 100%. Everyone agrees that, but basically most people say that when you're dealing with an incandescent light bulb, you really are starting to consider possible derisas for sure like that. Shlomo Zalman basically came out and said, on a lot of electrical items, right? Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was the Posek Gedor in Eretz Yisrael until he passed away in the 90s, right? It's like when Ramosha died in America, it was, and then Shlomo Zalman died in Eretz Yisrael. It was like the end of an era in many ways. In fact, the fact of the matter is, when Ramosha died, I was a Rabbi in Kingston, New York at the time, and I was able to watch the news. I actually found out about his patira after the funeral. I might have went down, his death. I found about it after the funeral. So the point is, but I watched the news that night, and he had a big funeral, thousands of people at the funeral. So and the New York
Times.
The TV news went around and said, what's the difference? And there was one guy there, a guy says, look around over here. You'll see people with knitted kippot, and you'll see Hasidim with shtreimels. You'll never see this again. You'll never see a whole spectrum of Orthodox Jewry at one person's levaya ever again. That's what this guy said about Ramosha, and when he said that, I said he's absolutely right. Ramosha was the last person accepted by everyone. Okay, but there's one caveat. That was in America. That statement could have also been said by Shlomo Zalman at his funeral in Eretz Yisrael. You also had across the spectrum. Okay, but Shlomo Zalman came out and it says, and he brings it out in his sefer, in Psak, he says he can't. There's certain things that are electrical. He doesn't really know why it's usher. He really doesn't know why it's usher. He can't figure out why it's usher. But the minhag Yisrael is to do it. So unless there's a real tzarach gadol, if there's a tzarach, then you shouldn't do it.
It's not intellectualism at that point.
Yes, it is.
It's intellectual to a point, and then
but the fact that matters because that's an intellectual principle.
But isn't there also
minhag Yisrael is an intellectual principle? These are all principles in the determination of the law.
But
you could easily say, blind faith isn't.
No, it's not. No. You see, the point is,
at some point you just say.
So the question you're getting at is why do they accept? Why do you accept Har Sinai? Why do you accept that aspect? The fact of the matter is everyone starts with certain a priorities. Everyone starts with certain aspects. The difference, though, is there's always starting points, and then how you develop those starting points. Hellenists had their starting points. We had different starting points. They challenged our starting points because they challenged revelation. But our defense of revelation is not just simply blind faith. We have arguments for revelation. We have reasons for revelation. One of them is the fact that in previous generations who were intelligent had accepted this idea of revelation. The fact is, in a certain level, there's always a question. There's a book a friend of mine just came out with against atheism. Rabbi Averick, Moshe Averick. I forget the title, but it's something about nonsense in it. And when I was reading through it, I basically recognized that in the end, everyone has something incomprehensible. Okay? The atheist has something incomprehensible. He can't understand infinity. He can't understand a lack of cause and effect. Okay? And he can't understand where life came from. And there was just some point in time where something just doesn't make sense. The argument is that there's always this abyss. If you're a theist and you believe in God, the abyss is the very belief in God. Because what do you believe in when you believe in God? You're believing in an entity that is totally outside of your comprehension.
Isn't that like saying anything, the same concept as saying anything can exist because we just haven't found it yet?
The atheist tries to say that, but the fact of the matter is it's exactly right. But the point is that how did something come out of nothing? It's incomprehensible to the human mind. Infinity is incomprehensible to the human mind. But the truth is, God is incomprehensible to the human mind because the very definition of God is He's outside the rules of our comprehension. Right? When you talk about the Creator, right? Mimala mina teva means that we have no understanding. Above, higher than reality, is that you're basically saying that everything in this world has to be created. There has to be a cause and effect. But there's another dimension, and something out of that dimension created this dimension. Well, that's fascinating, but that's what you really believe in. So in a certain way, but an atheist then has to turn around and say, we're here, well, how? That's also an abyss. The fact is that there's always, the only thing is how do you take it from there? The point is what happens in terms of Torah is the mind is still involved. It's still involved. Now, are there limits? Does it confront things in terms of that? But it's not simply blind faith. There's faith, but it's not blind faith. You have to intelligently challenge that faith, and then you have to go with decisions. You have to make decisions. And if you make decisions accepting that there was a Har Sinai, it's going to be different decisions. So when you do Mila on a baby, you understand the issues. You have an argument to say that this actually is a tikkun to the baby. Nowadays we're much more comfortable with it because some doctors say it's really very good for the baby and so forth and so forth. But the fact is we have to say it's some tikkun to the baby. Right? Because we have information. But we understand the challenges. This really leads to the Jewish concept of freedom of religion. See, it's a very interesting thing that this leads to. But the fact is that really you have to understand the Chanuka battle was not just a battle in terms of military battle, it was a battle of thought processes. And when we defeated the Hellenists, we basically said, we also think. You're not the only format of thinking. We can think, and we can think al pi Torah. And that's Torah Sheba'al Peh. Now, it's not old-time religion, it's actually a thoughtful system.
Here's something interesting.
Yeah.
And I think it's in Eretz Yisrael. That difference between... that there are two things to be learned from this. There's one, that how we view... Well, okay, basically that in Chanuka it's a battle of against our religion, and in Purim it's a battle against us as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And the lessons you learn from both is by comparing them, is that when it comes to battles against ourselves, it's a psak from Hashem, and you basically pray.
Mm-hmm.
However, with Chanuka, when it's a battle against a religion, it's a chance to show, to stand up and we actually fight. And therefore, that's a lesson we should learn from the Dor.
Interesting perspective. Okay. Anyways, but also during Purim, there was also a big battle also after the fact. Okay.
After that,
right. But the fact is that an interesting perspective. Okay. Anyways, but let me just say, I just want to dig to the Jewish view of freedom of religion. With what I presented, a very different view of freedom of religion from a Jewish perspective. There's a Rashi in Gemara Shabbos, Lamed Aleph Lamed Aleph. It says something that's unbelievable. There's three cases of a non-Jew, three different non-Jews who approach Hillel and Shammai. Okay, the most famous one is the one who stands on one leg, right? This is the most famous one. Teach me all Torah standing on one leg. Shammai kicks him out, and Hillel says, "It's love your neighbor as yourself." He actually says, "Don't do your neighbor what you don't want to yourself." That's go to Torah and go learn the rest. Okay, that's the most famous one. It's another one. Another one says a non-Jew comes to Shammai and says, "How many Torahs are there?" And Shammai says, "Torah Sheba'al Peh and Torah Sheba'al." So the guy says, "Convert me on condition of accepting only Torah Sheba'al." And Shammai kicks him out. Goes to Hillel and does the same thing. Okay, Hillel says, "Okay," and then says, "But you have to start learning." So he started learning Torah. He said, "Okay, where do we start?" Learning from Aleph Beis. So the non-Jew came to start doing, learning Aleph Beis. So Hillel taught him Aleph Beis. Comes back the next day, and so Hillel says, "Okay, so let me hear the Aleph Beis. You're practicing this." Yeah, right. I know good. This is an Aleph. And Hillel says, "No, it isn't. That's a Taf." Then he points to the base. He says, "This is a base." And Hillel says, "No, that's a Shin." And he says, "Wait a second. This is a Gimel." "No, that's a Reish." So looks at him and says, "What are you talking about? Yesterday you told me this is an Aleph, this is a base, this is a Gimel, and you told me this is a Reish, and this is a Shim, this is a Taf. So now you're telling me something different?" So Hillel says, "If you believe me when I tell you what the letter is about, okay, believe me that there's a Torah Sheba'al Peh." What was his lesson? Is that if you really look at it, anything that's written only has validity because of the oral accompaniment with it.
yes.
When you have someone saying, "This is the Holy Bible," well, if the book itself says it's the Holy Bible, who cares? Okay? It's because someone you trust says it's the Holy Bible. So really what you have to first believe in is that this person is telling you something true. So really you have to believe in the person and the oral transmission before you accept anything else. So that's really what Torah Sheba'al Peh is about. Torah Sheba'al Peh is about saying that this is what is this, that the Torah transmission is true. Okay, it's an interesting Rashi there. There's a big problem. The guy says, "Convert me on this condition." The Gemara says, and Hillel converted him. There's a problem with that. The problem is he converted him before he accepted Torah Sheba'al Peh. Okay? Now, how can he convert him before he accepted Torah Sheba'al Peh? It's a problem in halacha. There's a Gemara that says that if a person denies one aspect of a mitzvah, you can't convert him. So if you're sitting there with that, and this is a whole issue there, it's wrong now, but if a person actually says, "I want to convert except that I still want to eat Big Macs," can't convert him.
What if he says, "I want to convert, but I'm still going to eat Big Macs, but I understand what I'm doing is wrong"?
There's problems with that also. It's not makabel mitzvahs.
Because you can't makabel everything.
But the fact is that that's something different. Okay, the point is, I don't want to get into that. I understand the issue. The person says, I don't believe that this is a command from God. Okay, so clearly, if a person doesn't accept Torah from Baal Peh, he's not going to accept the halachos. So Rashi says something very fascinating there. Rashi says not that the guy didn't believe. It wasn't a kafir. He just didn't believe. Okay, and that's why Hillel could convert him. Not that he was a kafir, because he just didn't believe. Okay, which
so
means
the definition of a kafir.
Right. So what does that mean? What it means is, the way I understand it, I think, is that not believing, okay, is something that's part of the human condition. Okay, stating that's if you state that that's wrong, like I believe A, and that's and not B, that's making a definitive statement. Okay, he wasn't making a definitive statement that it's not true. He was saying, I don't know. I don't believe. I don't know. It's an interesting aspect over there.
Well, there's a difference between I don't believe and I don't know.
No, but when he says is I don't believe is an aspect that I don't. It's not proven to me.
So it's not atheism. It's more like
agnosticism.
It's like I don't know if ghosts exist. So versus there are no ghosts.
Versus making an emphatic statement.
They're not part of my life because I can't prove that they're
another way.
They're
in terms of hasra, if a person is about to kill someone, to be punishable by the court, he has to have two witnesses, and the witnesses have to warn him.
3 times.
Right? Okay, no, just has to warn him once. Yeah, just for this. Just has to warn him that this is Keneged Torah. And the guy has to say, Afal Pikein, I know it's against the Torah, but if he says, I don't know it's against the Torah, he can't be held accountable. Because ignorance of the law is an excuse in Jewish law. Okay, unless there's societal implications. And so the guy's basically using this and never saying, hey, I know it's wrong, okay, but he's going around murdering people, then you got to take him up for the benefit of society. But in terms of actual halacha, he has to state, I know that God said not to do it, I'm still going to do it. But if he says, I don't know, I'm not sure, I don't believe it, then you have to sit there and say, so what is that really saying? Judaism recognizes that human beings have to think. And therefore, when you come to conclusions of what you believe in and what you understand, it's an aspect of your thought process. Okay, this is very, very different than the Christian concept of belief. You know, that the Yetzer Hara is belief and so forth. There might be something of the Yetzer Hara that makes you maybe be moving to a belief, but there's something within Torah that understands that there is a challenge of belief. And the person who's facing that challenge, we have some aspect of understanding it. So if a person says, I don't know, I'm still struggling with it, we understand that struggle.
It's also the idea of, well, I know at least from Brasil Placidus that there's the idea of growth. As I don't think Christianity has the same idea. It's either you're a sinner or you're not.
Well, that's something that's very different. It's true. Christianity does not have the same idea.
With Judaism, it's like you can say I'm doing, and our generations become more and more aware of this. That there are things I do, but I'm working on it.
But you're focusing on the behavior and the fact that you can grow and so forth and so forth. The truth is, the Rambam says it very, very powerfully, in the sense that he basically says what you need to get into Olam Haba is one mitzvah done right. It's a famous Mishnah in Makos that's quoted all the time in Pirkei Avos, that that God wanted to benefit the Jewish people. Okay, Hebrew and Torah gave him a lot of mitzvahs. Okay, so the famous question is, what do you mean? He wanted to benefit the Jewish people, gave him a lot of mitzvahs. So if you have a lot of mitzvahs, you can also make a lot of mistakes. It's true, you can get more schar, but you can also get more ornish. Why is that a benefit to the Jewish people? So Rashi says he gives a lot more mitzvahs than you're going to do anyways. So he says, like the Yisr of Nevela. No one will eat that meat. There's a wild animal was chewed up by another wild animal, and you look at it and say, oh, I don't know, who would want to eat that animal who was killed? It's disgusting. But you saying I'm not going to eat it, you're kind of mitzvah of not eating nevela. So Rashi says God Baruch Hu gave a lot of mitzvahs you're going to do anyways. It's like, hey, I'm giving you a mitzvah to breathe. It's hard. It's unbelievable. That's what Rashi says. The Rambam says something very different. He gave you a lot of mitzvahs, so you find what mitzvah you can do right. Because the ticket to Olam Haba is getting one mitzvah done right. So it's just the opposite of Christianity. Christianity says that you had one sin and you're going the other way, right? It's got to be perfect, white, perfect.
Unless you give a donation to the Catholic Church.
Okay, well, the fact is, but there's another way, okay? But we say all we want you to do is get one thing right. That's why the Rambam says if you're already a tzaddik, if you got 51, if you're not Beinoni, you're already a tzaddik. If you're a little bit, because we're much understanding, because you're moving and growing and so forth. But I'm talking in terms of thought. Okay, the point is that from the Jewish aspect of free religion, we understand that people struggle. People have to deal with ideas. So the truth is that this really comes down to Chanuka. It's my thing, and our senior scholar Rabbi Turn actually said this. Because that when is it that the Maccabees started imposing religion? When they were being imposed upon. If you have a religion that's trying to impose upon you, we're going to fight back and say, listen, if you're not tolerant of us, we're not going to be tolerant with you. But what's the normal attitude of Judaism? Is to basically allow you the time to grow, allow you to work through your ideas. We're not necessarily trying to say, hey, you're all evil right off the bat. What we'll try doing is dealing with your ideas and trying to talk through these ideas because we understand that. Wait, what? Okay, the fact is let me try to explain this. When Klal Yisrael went into Eretz Yisrael, we basically didn't have any tolerance. But you have to understand something. Okay, in that world. Everyone knew about the miracles of the desert. Okay, Rachav, when the spies come to Rachav, the woman who saved the spies and told Yoshua the inside dope on Eretz Yisrael, who eventually ended up marrying Yoshua, according to the Medrash. The fact of the matter is that she says, we all know what you guys did. Klal Yisrael went through the desert with the Anoni HaKavod, the bear, right? Lightly him in the way, talking about it. If you think about this was not normal. And they're coming up into Eretz Yisrael and saying, hey, you guys all heard what happened a few years ago to Egypt? Most powerful nation in the world? Yeah. Next? Okay, who's going to take us on next? And Yericho is saying, oh, we are. Well, are you crazy? We're giving you the option. Get the heck out of the country. We're going to wipe you out. You're not talking about people who didn't know anything.
Is that an ultimatum for Shem Mitzvahs?
Yeah, they can do Shem Mitzvahs. They can become Gary Tosha. They can leave the country, or we're going to wipe them up. But the fact is basically what they said is, hey, listen, you know the truth. This is not you struggling with it. You already saw what went on over here. So you're talking about a unique type of rishus. When people talk about Yeshua wiping out the nation, it was a one-time issue. It does not give you a heter at any other time in life, in history. Okay? But usually when Klal Yisrael dealt with people, Klal Yisrael dealt with the fact that they were coming. That's why we have a very tolerant attitude. Throughout the Middle Ages, our attitude towards non-Jews was minhag avosayim biyadehim. These guys don't really believe it. They're just doing what tradition is, and they're just following the tradition. And we give them time to think it through or whatever. We have an inherent tolerant aspect because we recognize people think, or people should think, and therefore we believe that there's ways of working through ideas and so forth and so forth. But that's our freedom of religion. Okay. In other words, if we had freedom of religion, we basically say, listen. Obviously, we're not going to be too tolerant of idolatry, but what we're not going to be tolerant of is you guys not thinking. You have to think through your ideas.
Wait, so it's not the idea of saying that let us Jews be our Jews in Israel, do whatever we want, and you guys can do.
No. There would be clearly pressure on against the idolaters. We would not let idolatry happen in Eretz Yisrael.
So does that mean I don't mean in Eretz Yisrael. Let's say, let's give a scenario where Eretz Yisrael is completely Jewish.
Yeah.
We have total control.
Yeah.
Freedom of religion for our freedom of religion. No other religions there, and let the rest of the world do it.
The fact of the matter is that the truth of the fact is we have a certain intolerance of idolatry. Okay, we will not allow idolatry to be practiced in Eretz Yisrael. But the fact is, idolatry we consider to be barbaric, and some aspects of barbarianism. There's a Meiri that seems to imply that and there's arguments like this that true idolatry is barbaric. If there's already some moral basis to something, then you can actually start questioning whether it really is idolatry or not. There may not be a whole like
Hinduism.
Right. But the question is it really idolatry, or is it just a lot of secondary powers? Because there seems to be in Hinduism one overall power and so forth. The same way we argue Shituf in terms of Christianity and so forth. But the point is that there's a tremendous amount of thought in this idea, in the sense that the fact is we are tolerant of thinking.
Tolerant is, there's a difference between tolerant and being assertive.
Oh, we are going to assert Torah. There's no doubt we're going to assert Torah.
So here's my question, because this is a big argument amongst Klal Yisrael as a whole, and it's one of the things I feel that we have a problem with. The whole idea of Or L'Goyim and what's the one, helping others. It's the mantra of the secular movement.
Oh, Tikkun Olam.
Of Tikkun Olam.
Right.
So there's so many halachas that deal with your community, the Jews around you. How do you have time for Tikkun?
So the fact is, that's actually an interesting question.
So that's what I know for myself. I've been trying to work out.
Okay. So the interesting question is first of all, there's a balance here. The point is that there's an idea that as you build up your community, so it's able to have its further goal. The question is why you're building up your community. Are you building up your community because it's self-serving and we don't care about anything else? Or are you building up your community because you want your community to be stronger, to be able to fulfill its mission, which is to spread the values of Torah to the world?
So why don't we talk to... We're actually told not to talk Torah to...
So the fact is... That's an interesting question about leaving the Torah to non-Jews. It's not so simple. Shem Mrs. Beinoch, you teach them Shem Mrs. Beinoch. The fact is there's a lot of issues about this. It's whether they're talking about people who won't treat Torah with respect. Like the Rambam has a famous statement that you can, even though the Rambam held there's a whole thing with the Rambam held that Islam was clearly monotheist. He basically didn't see Christianity as monotheist, right? He felt that Christianity was avodah zarah. Okay, but he said it was okay to teach Torah to a Christian. In his Chuvas, you're allowed to teach Torah to a Christian, you can't teach it to a Muslim. Why? The Christians accept the divine origin of the Torah. The Muslims say it was all mixed up and edited by Jews and so forth and so forth. It's not really the real book. Okay, and that's why they have things in the Torah that are against their Quran. But the point is, they believe it was not the real thing. But that's exactly what the difference is over here. The Jews. But the truth is that you can teach Torah as Torah, okay? But you have to make sure that they respect it as Torah. So the fact is that when they say teaching Torah to a non-Jew, there's some teachers who hold you can't teach Torah to an idolater who won't treat it with the respect of Torah. Okay? There's a whole bunch of issues like that, because there's another Gemara that says that a non-Jew who knows Torah is equal to a Kohen Gadol. So it's a very difficult idea, and in terms of teaching them, you have to teach them Shem Mitzvah Beinoch. But the point is that clearly there's a lot of sources that say the ultimate goal of the Jews is to get across the message of God to the Olam. We say it in the other, we don't Yeshem Echad Shmo Echad. Right? We always are trying to spread it out. The point is how do you get there? So the way we believe is you have to make the team work better first. So make Klal Yisrael work better. But you should know that this was also an issue in terms of Kiruv.
Yes.
Okay, when Kiruv started, there was a whole issue of whether you should Mekarev or whether you should focus on our community. There was a lot of Rosh Yeshivas who were against Kiruv because they felt that there was a need to just focus on the Frum community. Okay, you can't. You're going to
being Mekar of other Jews.
Yes, because you're not ready to Mekar of other Jews yet.
So why isn't one of the reasons you can leave Eretz Yisrael to influence Gentiles?
Okay, so the question is that's a good question. The point is how are you supposed to influence them? You're supposed to influence them from the Torah society. Judaism is not people talk about personal God and personal religion. Judaism is much more national religion. We are unique in the fact that we believe in the creation of a Jewish society, a Jewish country, state. What I mean is a national entity, and this should be a model state to the world. That's what
do you
really
call Rome?
Yeah, but the fact is that it's not personal. The fact is they say the Gullahs, that was the point of the Gullahs, to spread us out there. But the truth is our ideal has to be the creation of a national entity. We are not a personal religion. We're a national religion, and we are a national entity. We're supposed to be Klal Yisrael. The famous mantra of all the religious Zionists, Am Yisrael be'eretz Yisrael in Torah Yisrael. The fact of the matter is that's absolutely correct. It's not just a mantra. It's that it's the nation of Israel is supposed to have a stated, like even the Chasam Sofer says, when you're saying in the land, it doesn't just mean you live on the land. It means you actually have a country going. That's why the Chasam Sofer said, for example, that even though he wasn't a big favor of secular studies, but he says in terms of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, you need your plumbers, you need your doctors, you need your accountants. So therefore, you have to have secular studies in Eretz Yisrael because you have to make a country. So we're creating a unique Jewish country, and that's supposed to be the model to the world. It's a model of how we live as a nation.
Why are we missionaries?
What?
Why are we not missionaries then?
Because that's the point. Missionaries weren't personal God; they were dealing with individuals. Truth of the matter is, it's not simply we're not missionaries. We're not missionaries to becoming Jews, but we do encourage Shem B'nai Noach. Actually, Rabbi Michael Broad has a whole argument. The Rambam clearly holds we have an obligation to teach non-Jews about the Shem B'nai Noach.
So why don't we?
Okay. So Ramosha says it's not our we have to first fix ourselves up.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Well,
right. That's exactly it. We have to fix ourselves up. We have to take care. There's a way of doing it. You got to make sure we're strong enough first.
So how can? Because from my experience and my talking to, let's call it Haredi society, which is very insular and very.
They don't know things like this. You're right.
They don't. Their whole thing is that they're too weak. A lot of them to do.
Yeah, they're right.
So even do care with Jews.
Right. Exactly. But that's the point. So work on that. If you're weak, then work on it. But the problem is we're weak, or we're inherently weak, we can't do it. You're weak, then work on it. And then if you build up a nation, it's an interesting thing in terms of understanding that corporate entity of Klal Yisrael as a corporate entity of the nation. It's something that we aren't just personal. We aren't just believers in a personal God. We believe in the national God and a corporate entity. Therefore, that corporate entity is supposed to be this nation of Israel. And the fact is, with a land, and with a country, and with an economy, and with a society, and so forth and so forth. And that's how we're supposed to influence the world.
So, in terms of Israel, obviously, they should really be promoting the idea of the Jewish state as the Torah state.
Yes, that's clearly the ideal. How you can bring that about is a problem, because the truth is that's where you get into the aspects of freedom of religion, because there's a value within Torah that does recognize that the person has to come to this belief. That's why, if you look in terms of, I referred to lack of hasra. If a guy basically says, "Listen, I just don't believe in this, and that's why I'm eating the Big Macs," he doesn't get makas. Therefore, there's an aspect of allowing a person to think. But the difference in freedom of religion is our understanding of freedom of religion is the freedom to think and to make the mistakes necessary to work out these ideas.
But there's also danger in that.
Of course, there has to be a balance to that. But the freedom of religion that we live in our world, the North American freedom, is allowing you to believe in any mishigas you want to believe in. We don't allow you to believe in any mishigas you want to believe in. Okay? But because we allow you to think. Right?
So because that's very interesting, because I know in the medical world, you come into some very interesting, or even in the diaspora universities, there are three topics that are brought up: gay marriage, legalization of prostitution, legalization of drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So, from a secular medical perspective, one could understand why prostitution should be legalized. Mm-hmm. Same thing with gay marriage. Let them do what they want. Drugs is whatever. But so some things that seem more black and white than they are. As a Jew, can we take that stance?
No, you just take a stance of thought. But then if you're going to argue against it, you have to have reasons to argue against it. It's got to be a challenge and an argument. You can't just sit there and like I saw in terms of abortion things that drove me crazy in the sense that you had pro-life versus pro-choice. You had two people just yelling at each other. I'm right, you're right, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right. The point is that no, you better be able to dialogue and present your positions and analyze it and deal with it and not just sit there and say that guy is just evil. You better have arguments for it. And then when you think it through, you start seeing different perspectives. The truth is that Torah is an intelligent system.
Intelligent, but is it intelligent? Well, I guess you kind of answered this. So there's an intelligence, but from my own interpretation and my own, let's say, foundation, is that I look at it that it is open to other opinions. You can analyze it through other sources, but the core is analyzing through a Jewish source.
Absolutely.
Other means to do it.
Absolutely. You analyze the Jewish sources, but the fact is, you aren't. But the point is Jewish sources do have an aspect. Obviously, you believe in Revelation. You believe in Sinai. That's going to be different than secularists. But the truth is that you see from Chanuka, we didn't just throw our minds aside. Yes. We didn't just sit there and say, no, we're right. We are the farthest away from fundamentalists. You know, the fundamentalist South, the great Satan is Harvard and Yale and so forth and so forth, right? No. I saw what?
It's the professors.
Right. I saw, for example, a statement. There's a rabbi. Oh, here goes. I think it's Rabbi Ben Zamoga, who is from the 1800s from Italy, and he was talking about something, and he said something absolutely remarkable. He was a big makubal. And he wrote a book on Jewish attitudes to Christianity, a book on Jewish attitudes to Islam. He has a section on that in this book, but he then makes a statement. He says, from a Jewish perspective, okay, Plato, Aristotle, and Marcus Aurelius is in paradise. From a Christian perspective, they didn't believe in Jesus. Even though Jesus wasn't around, they're all eternal damnation, whatever it is. But from a Jewish perspective, he makes a statement that in the same way that Moses is in paradise, we believe that Plato and Aristotle was paradise. And I said that. It was a remarkable statement that he said that. And they have questions. But the point is that the struggling...
Paradise, you mean Olam Haba?
Olam Haba. The fact of the matter is I'm not going to get into who has Olam Haba, who doesn't have Olam Haba, because I don't make that decision. Because Baruch Hu is the one who really knows what's going on. But the point is human beings, right, have to struggle. We don't know the truth.
So back to your point, they were in Olam Haba because on what merit?
The fact that they thought and they tried to figure out what life was about. They tried to improve life and think about what the proper behavior was.
So because they thought so for them it's different. Is that the same for a Jew?
Yeah.
So a Jew,
that's an aspect of Tue Jun.
So as long as
the very concept of Tue Jun,
if you get it wrong.
If you try, that's what Tue Jun is about.
Exactly. But the point is that you can be astray in your thinking.
Yes,
I mean, that's why you're tzibur, because the person can get derailed from their
absolutely. There's an aspect of looking at those things. The point of the matter is that's why you have to look at yourself. And you have to sit there and say, wait a second, are you sure it's not what you want that's leading you to this thing? Are you sure it's not something, some taiva that's making you think incorrectly? You have to have a lot of self-analysis.
But there's self-analysis and there's also idea of, like for instance, Breslov Chassidus and also Chassidus in general, but also even I think the Gra talks about that. You should learn. There is idea of das akum. Like there's das akum. However, you're not supposed to. Rav Nachman at least was very against learning about using knowledge of Gentiles that will bring you further away from Judaism.
And the Gra said for every amount of secular knowledge that you're lacking 10 times that amount of Torah. You have to have secular knowledge to understand Torah. It's a big machlokas. Okay, but the Gra was one of those people who said you have to have secular knowledge. Rav Nachman, a lot of people said no.
Well, no, that's not what he said.
Okay, Alex,
what?
Please,
that's not what he said.
Don't interrupt.
No, I'm not.
No, this is fine.
We're kind of, but that's not what he said.
He was limited in terms of secular knowledge.
He was limiting because fact is how many Jewish philosophy majors are actually Yerushalayim, and I know you believe this.
I know that. The fact of the matter is that's part of the problem. The point is that you could be led astray, but the point is that, you know, you don't know what your personal wishes are like. You don't know what your titles are like. These are challenges. You can be challenged even by. That's why you can be challenged by a lot of what you may think are good drives. You may not like that Ramosha statement about the person with we talked about before with Kumsa and Bar Kumsa. It says that person was too afraid to take a position. Moshe was a remarkable Baal Chiddush, and he basically says there are times you have to be a remarkable Baal Chiddush, and he says people argue him and says you're saying something no one ever said this before, and he says listen, I'm not Rabbi Akiva Eger. Okay, I know I'm not Rabbi Akiva. I know I'm not these people. But there comes a time where a person has to make a decision. On the other hand, if you talk like that, you can also it could be your guide that's doing it. There's a lot of self-analysis of an individual. That's why ultimately, who's the only dying of what a person is about? It's Kadosh Baruch Hu. You don't know whether your anivus is wrong or you don't know whether your guide is wrong. A lot of times, person's anivus might be, you know, his humility might be the problem. There's people who are too humble. Same thing with there's people who are too giving. There's people who the fact of the matter is
about it.
Right. The fact of the matter is that you have to make decisions. The remarkable thing about Torah is you have to make decisions. People want black and white. They want. I remember once on Sukkot, I had a guest over, and it was a little chilly in the Sukkot. And he says, "Okay, at what temperature do we go in?" I said, "It's up to you. If you're too cold, you go in. If you're not too cold, you know, I'm comfortable, right? I'm still comfortable." He says, "No. What temperature do I go in?" I said, "I'm telling you, it's your call. Yeah. How do you feel?" He says, "What kind of rabbi are you? Give me a psak." I said, "Don't you understand? It's your call." And he was very uncomfortable with it. But the fact of the matter is in many ways, it's your call. And it's very frightening. You're there, and it's only you and the Kadosh Baruch Hu making that decision. And for every human being, there's always that point. The Rabbi you're supposed to pick, even if you're not saying I don't know pasuk myself. Well, who did you ask the psak for? Remember Rabbi Brian once we were talking about this, and the person says so he says ask the shayla, and Rabbi Brian says my answer. So the guy says okay, so who should I go ask the shayla to? So Rabbi Brian would say there's this one, there's that one, there's this one, there's this one, and the guy and then the guy would say okay, but who should I ask? And everybody used to say, you don't get it. If I tell him who to ask, I'm really pasquing for him. Yeah, sure. Right? Because I know what this guy will say. So the point is that the same idea.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So just to finish up with the share. So in regards to the fact that Chanuka was a war against
war against Hellenism.
It was a war against Hellenism.
Right.
And in terms of the ideal of a Jewish state, would you allow other religions as long as they're in the pursuit of
in our world today, okay, without the absolute argument we have, okay, in the sense that I think that yes. See, the difference of Mashiach coming, that's why I think in many ways there was an underlying assumption by certain people of why they wanted to wait for Mashiach. It was a practical idea. The fact of the matter is, without Mashiach, how can you absolutely prove it? Yeah. You're going up to someone and saying, Kadosh Baruch Hu gave us this land and now pack it. I says, what are you talking about? My family's been here for a couple 100 years. Let me see, what are you talking about? Because your book says, well, what is this talking about? The fact of the matter is, people felt, listen, how am I going to do it? The Mashiach comes, this is the truth.
It'll be clear.
It's a little bit clearer.
It'll be from a stance of power also.
Right. So it'll be a little bit clearer. The truth will be clearer.
So, but like, I don't know, because I know the lifestyle I grew up in. I know the society I grew up in. Right. You know the society I grew up in. There's the idea also of fear. Like, for instance, you don't want missionaries running around.
Right.
Like,
you're right, but the fact of the matter is, the difference with missionaries, you don't want to play games. You just want to have, but intelligence, you're willing to take on intelligence.
What about intelligent missionaries?
Well, that's another challenge.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, so then there's a challenge, but the fact is you want to. Don't forget, I point out something that you know something. There's a mistake people make. And I'm sorry to say it. I spoke in Providence, Rhode Island. There's a Shabbat in Providence, Rhode Island. And after lunch, I said, "Listen, I'll do some question and answers." And at the question and answer, there was a time where someone, there was one man stood up in the room and said, "Rabbi, exactly where you were standing right now, 25 years ago, We had a Protestant minister saying something to us. He says, I don't understand you Jews. If you believe you got the truth, why don't you missionize? And basically says, you're a bunch of selfish people. You think you got what's good for everyone and you're keeping it just for yourselves. And it really bothered me. He says, if you really think you're right, why aren't you telling people about it? Share the wealth. Okay? The fact of the matter is the fact that we don't missionize is something that makes a lot of people feel good. Because if you think you got the truth, why aren't you sharing it? The point is we do. Now the truth is, but you share it a certain way. You don't walk into someone with a gun and say, you better do this or we're going to shoot you.
But you don't sound on this.
Wait, let Rabbi.
Well, no, wait a second. What I'm saying is you don't torture someone to make it believe. But the truth of the matter is, what do you think Avraham Avinu was? Avraham Avinu was #1 missionary. That was his whole tafkid. That was separating him from every other monotheist in the world. He went out there, but he didn't do it through, hey, if you don't listen to me, I'm going to beat the crap out of you. He basically did it through intelligence and trying to get across his point.
But you also don't have Jews who stand on the corner of Dundas and...
Absolutely. Absolutely, because the fact is that there's a way of doing it with dignity. There's a way of doing it. But you basically, that's why in a lot of ideas you live, if you live an exemplary life, then you are an example to the world. And that makes the point across.
But that's passive.
Yeah, and not passive you have in mind. Not passive you have in mind that you are a representative of Kodesh Baruch Hu in the world.
But there's a difference between...
that you are the person that the world wants to be.
But there's a difference between saying that I'm just going to live my life as the best Jew as I can, and then people will see that and get enough from that, versus saying that I'm not only going to go out to live. I'm not only going to go out and live my life. I'm also going to go to rural towns where people don't know what religion is, and specifically Dafka do that.
The fact of the matter is how does that fit into the overall plan of you being your first and walking into that rural town and start talking to people and they think, where are you coming from? This is certain. All it is to say you use cheshbons, use thought, know how to do it.
In your interactions in the world, you are always an ambassador of Torah.
And maybe you do that in whatever world you're going to be in. You know, maybe that some people become lawyers, some people doctors, some people have to go out to become the.
But going back to the original question.
Wait, let Rabbi have.
No, it's fine. I'm finished.
He's finishing his points. But like the fact is, that's going back, because this is what I've been trying to ask the entire time. I don't think maybe I'm just not saying it well enough. But if you're in a, because that is passive. But if you're in a society, again, I guess we're kind of blessed to say that we live in a multicultural society because we can go out into multicultural world. However, if we were secluded in one area in our shtetl or in even our country,
the truth is that what I'm saying is that in the process, there's a process. You have to understand: are you able to do it? Are you not able to do it? I remember my Rabbi once. Okay, he says, when do you think people left the yeshiva? They were much older when people than when they leave yeshiva today, because they're around the Rebbe more and so forth. You have to be ready for whatever your jobs are going to be and so forth and so forth. It's a way of doing it. People are motivated by a lot of things, but are you there yet? There's a balance there. Are you there yet? Where you're going to go and how you help others? And maybe the way you're going to influence other people is that you're going to have to influence other people to be the teachers. Maybe your job is to influence other people who be out in the rural, out in the rural, in the boondocks.
So that could just be like. I don't think. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, I understand what you're saying, but the fact is I'm trying to say it's not just you and I want to do this. It might be that it takes a few years to get to that stage, and it might be that this person has to go like it might be like. I remember once, I'll start on with this point. I had a Rosh Yeshiva who said that was trying to make a point from he said that there was Rosh Yeshiva who had 3 Talmidim, and all 3 Talmidim wrote very famous works, but he didn't write any famous work. So Shiva says, and the Talmidim say he was like so much more brighter than himself and so forth. So this was, she was trying to make a point that you see someone who really was able to, didn't write the works, but these other people wrote works and they were more acceptable, and they accomplished something. But the one who really had the most talent and accomplished something, he's tried to make a point from this, that really it's not your talent, it's what you accomplish is because of the input from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, fine, that's part of it. So I remember going up to my Rabbi once and he said this. The Rabbi just looked at me and says, I understand his point. The Rabbi created the 3 Talmidim.
Yes.
Right? So the point is no, he didn't write a sefer, but he created the Talmidim.
Yes.
So he did create something. So the point is that that's part of it in terms of is that you have to think in a much broader sense. Is it maybe it's your tafkid now to sit and learn. Maybe it's your tafkid now to work in your environment and help other people. Maybe it's not up to you to go out to the rural place. Maybe that's not for you. Maybe it's for someone else. You have to think in terms of a broader scheme of things.